Hello, and welcome back to day 2 of your Workplace Health and Safety Conference. My name is Patrick Ledwell. So thrilled to be back with you for another exciting afternoon of engagement on safety and the workplace. I'm now pleased to introduce to you the opening plenary keynote speaker for the afternoon, Clinton Marquardt. I've heard an Irish proverb that says, a good laugh and a long sleep are the best cures in the doctor's book. The Irish are good at laughing and sleeping, maybe not so much at doctoring. But sleep is a science and sleep is an approach. And this afternoon, we have one of Canada's top sleep and fatigue specialists here. He takes the latest in fatigue science and turns it into practical, implementable solutions that reduce the risk of fatigue and propel the health, safety, and productivity of your 24/7 workforce towards excellence. Clinton Marquardt works with progressive organizations looking to improve their fatigue management practices and tap into sleep as a powerful, positive force. He's a frequent media interviewee in 2020, I can imagine, and has appeared on programs such as Global TV's 16 by 9, CBC News Network, CBC's The National, and W5. I know this presentation is going to be anything but a snooze fest. I'm pleased to introduce to you Clinton Marquardt.
Thanks for that great introduction and warm up for the day, Patrick. Thanks again. Patrick's going to be paying attention in the background a little bit. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat bar, and we'll try and get to them a little closer to the end. I want to get you some great information, so we'll focus on that first, and then we'll save a little bit of time for questions in the end. Now, day one is a pretty important day. It's important because it comes with a really special offer for you. The offer is a special, powerful pill, a magic pill that provides all sorts of amazing benefits. Now, the pill comes with benefits, as I said, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the benefits, and I want you to think about whether or not you take me up on the offer, whether or not you take this special pill. Okay? So if this pill reduced, or I would promise that it would reduce things like depression, anxiety, counteract stress, would you take the pill? What if I said this pill would also reduce your risk of things like heart disease, strokes, diabetes, and even cancer? Would you consider taking this pill? What if I then added in, it's going to reduce the injuries that you get at work, at home, everything from slips, trips, and falls to major injuries. It's going to reduce the number of mistakes that you make, and it might even reduce the likelihood of car accidents that you might experience now and in the future. Would you take the pill? What if now I said this pill also will let you live a longer life and a happier life, so a nice, long, happy life? Would you consider taking the pill? Now, what if I then said, you have to trade a little bit of time for the pill? What you have to do is you have to give up maybe 30 minutes to an hour every day, and you'll get this pill, this magic, powerful pill. Would you take it? Now, would you trade essentially time for the pill? Now, before you answer this, let's try a little experiment here. What I'd like to do is try and assess your fatigue level. So if you can pull out a pen and a piece of paper, what I'm going to do is read out a number of situations. And I want you to imagine being in that situation, not today, because today might not represent exactly how you feel. It might represent that you're more sleepy today, or you're not quite as sleepy, or you're more alert. So rather than using today as the reference point, think about how you felt across the last 3 weeks, maybe a month or so, and try and average it out in your head. Try and average out the likelihood that you would fall asleep or doze off in the situations that I am going to describe to you, okay? And rate them 0, 1, 2, or 3. 0, no chance of dozing off. 3, really high chance. And write your number down. We're going to add them up and see how everybody's doing. Okay, so here's the first situation. Sitting down and reading. Now remember, you're averaging it out across the last 3 weeks or so. Average it out across the reading material. Average it out across the day. So at any point during the day, if I had you to sit down and read, what's the likelihood you would doze off? Okay? Now write your number down. Okay. Next situation. sitting down and watching TV. Now, before you answer this one, think about where you normally watch TV. Usually at your house, a friend's house, family's house. So if you start nodding off and people start giggling at you, well, you know, who cares? It's not that embarrassing. Okay? So in that situation, what's the likelihood you would fall asleep? All right. Next one, sitting inactive in a public place. So now, if you fall asleep, you doze off, it's a little bit more embarrassing. Okay? So say you're sitting in one of those huge shopping malls where they've got the nice comfy couches waiting for your shopping partner. What's the likelihood you would doze off in that situation? 0, 1, 2, or 3. Next, you're a passenger in a car and you've been driving along for an hour without a break. Now, before you answer this one, the condition here is that you're comfortable with the drivers. You're not, you're not clamped onto the dash. Your knuckles aren't all white from clamping on there. You're comfortable with the driver. So you've been driving along in this comfortable scenario. What's the likelihood you would fall asleep in this situation? Okay. Next situation, lying down to rest in the middle of the afternoon. So you got nothing to do, no to-do list, nice comfortable day, and you lie down and you actually try and sleep. What's the likelihood you'd fall asleep, doze off? And it's in the middle of the afternoon. Okay. Next one, sitting down and talking with somebody. What's the likelihood you would fall asleep in that situation? And again, average it out between people you like, you dislike, whoever. What's the likelihood you would doze off in that situation? Next one, you've had a nice big lunch. You're satisfied, but you haven't had any alcohol at lunch. No beer, no wine, no spirits. What's the likelihood you'd fall asleep then? And you're sitting. You're not lying down. Okay, write your number down. Now you are the driver and you're stuck in traffic for a few minutes. You've hit a traffic snarl, some construction maybe, and you're just sitting there for a few minutes alone. What's the likelihood you would doze off in that situation? Okay. Now what I'd like you to do is add up your score. Now don't tell me the score just yet. Just add it up and we'll talk about it in a little while. What I just had you do is what's known as the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. It's a validated test, a validated instrument that we use in the sleep clinics to get an idea of how sleepy you are, how fatigued you are. We also use it in the sleep clinics to tease apart what type of fatigue you're experiencing. Right? There are different types of fatigue, and I'll explain those in a moment as well. Now, as a fatigue consultant, a sleep and fatigue consultant, what I'll use the Epworth Sleepiness Scale for, or in short, the ESS, is to get an overall general estimate of fatigue levels for either a work group or perhaps a whole organization as a baseline measurement. And then we'll do some sort of intervention. We'll do some training. Maybe we'll change shift schedules around a little bit. Maybe address some sleep disorders, and we come back a couple of months later and we do the ESS again. And we see, do we have a pre and post difference? Did we reduce people's fatigue? Okay, so it can be a very helpful tool in that sense as well. Now, I mentioned that it teases apart the different types of fatigue. If you think about how we use the term fatigue in the English language, at least, there's a whole bunch of different ways we can use it. And sometimes people get the use of the term fatigue a little mixed up. Two of the types of fatigue that it often mixes up is physical fatigue and mental fatigue. Now, I know I can't see you here, and you can see me, and perhaps you're sitting at home in your home office. So you might want to try this, even though it is a little bit embarrassing, a little corny. What I want you to do is raise your hand and open your palm. Now, open, close your fist, open, close, and make sure your arm is up, right? What I'd like you to do is keep doing that now for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. What's the first thing that's going to happen? Well, there's a pretty good chance your arm is going to become tired. It's going to become fatigued. And people will say that, oh, I feel fatigued now after doing this for 2 or 3 hours. Now, just because you've done this for 2 or 3 hours, it doesn't mean you're going to fall asleep more quickly. But people still describe it as being fatigued. So it's a different type of fatigue than the Epworth Sleepiness Scale assesses. Okay? Another type of fatigue that often gets mixed up in here is what we call mental fatigue. Now, if I were to change my voice and talk in a very monotonous tone like this, and I were to drone on for 3, 4, 5 hours, and I was to force you to listen to me, you'd eventually become mentally fatigued. It'd be hard to pay attention to that type of presentation. And after 3 or 4 hours of a really boring presentation like that, people might say, I feel fatigued. This type of fatigue also happens, say you're studying a new operations manual, a really boring manual or something of that nature, and it's hours and hours of reading, you become fatigued. But just because you've done that for 2 or 3 hours, it doesn't mean you're going to fall asleep more quickly. Okay? So physical fatigue and mental fatigue result from either using your body or brain power for too long a period of time without a break. They can also result from using your body or your movement or your brain power intensely for a short period of time, like in a workout or going to play hockey or in an emergency situation, trying to use all your brain power to figure this out. Okay. People describe themselves as feeling fatigued after those experiences. Now, this is a little different from sleep-related fatigue. Sleep-related fatigue is really what we're talking about today. Sleep-related fatigue. The Epworth Sleepiness Scale distinguishes between these different types of fatigue. So if you score high on the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, there's a pretty good chance you're suffering from sleep-related fatigue and not one of the other types of fatigue. Okay? Sleep-related fatigue results from either poor quality sleep, poor quantities of sleep, or essentially using up all of the benefits of a good night of sleep by being awake for too long. So in this sense, fatigue is a symptom of sleep issues. Right? Now, being awake for too long, this is an important one here. When you're talking about the average amount of sleep, the range is about 6 to 9 hours. So most people need between 6 to 9 hours. The average is weighted a little on the heavy end of things, so closer to 9 hours. So the average is about 8 hours of sleep. We all need about 8 hours of sleep, not per day or per night, but for every 24 hours of life. So if you look back in the immediate 24 hours preceding, say, right now, if you got 8 hours of sleep in there, then you're probably okay. As you stay awake longer and longer, you essentially use up the benefits of sleep. So if we need 8 hours of sleep for 24 hours of life, 24 hours of life minus 8 hours of sleep gives you 16 hours of wakefulness. So 8 hours of sleep essentially buys you 16 hours of wakefulness. After that, you start to feel fatigued. And this is typically what we see when people have been awake for 16, 17 hours. They will start to become fatigued and show some reliable performance impairments. There's some great studies that show if you've been awake for 17, 18 hours or so, some aspects of your performance are very similar to having a blood alcohol concentration of about 0.05 to 0.08%, somewhere in there. Which means that when you're fatigued, you could be operating like a drunk person, which is unsafe. You wouldn't want to be driving a car with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05, 0.08. You probably don't want to be working when you're fatigued or doing something safety critical when your performance is very similar. Okay? So fatigue or sleep-related fatigue is a symptom of insufficient sleep quality, sleep quantity, or being awake for too long. Now, when you're talking about the great benefits of this magical power pill I promised you, what you also see is all of the physical and mental health outcomes, these negative outcomes to wellness, safety risks. These are all symptoms of insufficient sleep quality, quantity, or again, being awake for too long. Which then means if we flip it around, getting a good night of sleep and not being awake for too long can treat these symptoms. You reduce the risk of these symptoms. Okay, now let's take a look at your score. And Patrick, if you're in the background there, maybe you could help me out a little bit. I think I can see it. I've got my glasses on here. What I'd like everybody to do is add up your score from your Epworth Sleepiness Scale, those situations that I put you in, and just type your score into the chat bar. Let's see what everybody's got here. So I'll give everybody a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to add it up and see where you're at. And then I'll give you the rating scale. So what are we getting here? 8, 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you seeing the same thing, Patrick?
I am. They're going by pretty rapidly.
Okay,
But,
good. Yeah, okay, so yeah, looking good. Oh, I'm seeing some nice low numbers. That's a good thing, but I'm also seeing lots of higher numbers here. Lots of people scoring above 5. Oh, there's a 1 in there. Great. I'm seeing a 2. That's very good too. But I'm also seeing 10, 15, yeah, 6, 15, 7, 12. Okay, here's where
the people with the highest numbers would be asleep by this point in the presentation.
Well, I'm
statistical
hoping
deviation.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you know, if I liven it up a little bit, we might wake those people up too. So let's
short of liveliness, but
let's see if we can get people awake a little bit longer. Let me show you the stats, and maybe that will or the scoring key, maybe that will wake you up a little bit. So operationally, what we like to see is if you're doing something safety critical or where a mistake might cost you or say your company dearly, and you can be doing things like accounting, right? If you make a mistake, you could cost the company thousands and thousands of dollars. We like to see people in 1 to 5 all the time. Now, I saw a few in there. I'm seeing one there now, 2, 1, but I saw a lot of people scoring higher than 5. Now, don't worry. I've done this this test, the upward sleepiness scale, with thousands of people. And invariably, in Canada, United States, Europe, we all score a little high. So the average is between 6 and 9. Now, that doesn't mean that's a good thing. What that means is we are all a little too fatigued, a little too sleepy. Oh, I'm just seeing a comment here. I have a 7-month-old. Yeah, that's going to impact your, your sleepiness for sure. You got about 18 more years of it. Okay, so higher scores mean to me that what we are doing is, rather than the trade of trading time to get a little bit of extra sleep. So that is, rather than giving up, say, 30 to 60 minutes of your day to get that magical pill, that power pill that I offered you at the beginning, what we're doing is the opposite. We're likely trading the sleep we get to get a little bit of extra time. We all have busy lives. There's all sorts of stuff we have to squeeze in there. So there's lots of reasons why we do it. But one of the most powerful reasons why we are trading sleep for time, why we're giving up a little bit of sleep to get extra time, is work. Work sets us up with a set of shared beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. So if you don't share these beliefs, work is going to be very uncomfortable for you. You're not going to be getting along with everybody there. You've got, your ideas are very different and you might not fit in. So we adopt what we call a workplace, or often referred to as an organizational culture, that helps define these behaviors, these beliefs, attitudes around how we do things around here. And one of the things we do is how we address sleep and how we manage fatigue. One really strong component of organizational culture that influences our beliefs, attitudes, behaviors around sleep and fatigue is the reward system that's often built into organizational culture. Let me give you a couple of real life examples here. So I was driving along Highway 40 leading into Montreal, coming in from Ottawa. Ottawa is my home base. And if any of you have driven along the 40, you know that it's kind of a scary road. As you enter into Montreal, the road becomes a lot more narrow and people maintain the high speed. You know, my wife is from Montreal and she drives like a Montrealer. And one day I asked, "Hey, honey, do you know what the speed limit is on the 40? And she said, it's 100 or 110. I got to maintain essentially track speed. And I said, no, it's 70 kilometers an hour. So people drive really fast on that road, and you've got merging intersections or merging ramps coming from all sorts of different directions, and you'll be going 100 kilometers an hour, and then all of a sudden, bang, traffic comes to a halt. So lots of rapid increases in speed and decreasing of speed. Yeah, somebody said, no chance of falling asleep then. Yeah, for sure. So I was driving along this road to try and be as safe as possible. And up beside me pulls this transport trailer. 40 is a nightmare. Yeah, you know the road. and I see this word dream. And, you know, my website is sleepanddreams.com. So dream, anytime I see it, it catches my attention. But then I look a little bit more closely and I see underneath the company name, which is Dream Big Transportation, I see the tagline, and hopefully you can see it on the slide. It says, miles to go before I sleep. So think about this just for a minute. To me, that indicates that this company values hard work so much that they displace sleep. They trade sleep for time. Now, I don't know this company, but just based on this tagline alone, I would say that they probably get a few extra contracts by offering this great on-time service, but at the expense likely of safety. Right? So they're probably pushing their drivers to arrive on time, perhaps keeping them awake for long periods of time that may indeed keep them awake for greater than 16, 17 hours, which means they could be driving like impaired people. Think about also, if they really focus on this on-time service, the other likelihood is that if the drivers don't arrive on time, there's probably some sort of penalty involved there. Maybe they don't get a bonus pay of some sort. Okay? So that, so I'm just seeing a note here. That phrase is from Robert Frost's poem. So they snagged it from that. Yeah, very good. In transportation, you know, I was a little concerned to see this. Now, here's another really good example. Now, I know you can't read this, but this is an actual letter from the management of a hospital to their frontline healthcare providers. So all of these people that have been working to keep us so safe by going through COVID, putting in all of these extra hours, you can imagine that they're quite fatigued. They're not getting the sleep that they need. So the letter says, now I'll read just a couple of paragraphs from it. It says, it has come to the attention of the executive management team that people have been sleeping overnight in the simulation room, the on-call rooms, and elsewhere in the hospital. Moving forward, staff working the night shift will not be sleeping as they are not paid to sleep. They are paid to work the full night shift. And at the end of this statement, it says, sign this paper stating that you understand and you will comply. In other words, now, if they get caught sleeping, perhaps trying to do the right thing, catch a little bit of extra sleep so that they perform well, they could be then penalized for it. So this company, this healthcare company, it's from the United States actually, values getting their money's worth out of employees more so than keeping their public safe. They're willing to accept the increased risk of a medical error that could actually cause somebody's death rather than allow people get a little bit of extra sleep. Okay? So the culture here really does not support trading a little bit of time to get my magical pill, to get a little bit of extra sleep. So one of the things we have to think about is, how can we evolve our organizational cultures? How can we change the way we do things around here? How can we change our shared beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors to evolve our culture forward a little bit? And I mentioned that there is a reward system that's often embedded in there that supports the trade of sleep for time. That is, we give up sleep to get a little bit of extra time. So one of the things you should be thinking about is, well, how are we rewarding people for doing this trade, for doing essentially deprioritizing sleep? And once you find these rewards, you should start slowly removing them. Now, I say slowly because these organizational cultures have been built up over many, many years, long periods of time. And if you just stop doing those rewards, people will be a little bit confused, upset, maybe even frustrated. So you can't just say, we're going to stop doing them. You have to slowly remove them and then start replacing them with rewards for more sleep promoting type behaviors. Okay? So currently, these rewards could be for, say, working extra long hours, for being the hero and never stopping work just so that, you know, you don't let your team down, for maybe feeling fatigued, but continuing to push through that pain and take the risks. Again, so you don't let the company down or so your colleagues down, or just so you can get that job done. These rewards can be obvious things, and we've all seen situations where if you work a few extra hours, you get double time off or time and a half off. So we get time off in lieu. That's considered a reward. It makes you feel good for having worked those extra long hours. So those types of rewards are kind of obvious. Some of the rewards aren't really that obvious, though. You could be giving people attaboys and attagirls in front of their peers. Hey, thanks for staying late last night and getting the work done. Thanks for taking an unscheduled night shift to get it done. And if you do that in front of people, again, the person receiving that reward, they feel really good about it. So that's more of a hidden reward system. Or after working long, heavy hours for years and years, again, not so obvious a reward. You might get a great promotion for doing it, or a special bonus, or you might get seconded on a really fun project for being such a hard, diligent worker, never taking any time off. Right? So you want to slowly withdraw these rewards and start thinking about how can we reward people for, instead of skimping on sleep to get time, how can we reward people for essentially giving up a little bit of time to get more sleep and better sleep? Okay? So what we want to do is move people away from the old Benjamin Franklin style thinking. And he's kind of famous for saying, you know, I'm going to sleep when I'm dead. And we still hear people saying that today. The exact quote, at least what I pulled from the internet, was, there will be enough time for sleeping in the grave. So you got to wait till you die to get some sleep. Or you'll often hear people say that sleep is a waste of time. Right? They haven't realized that sleep is this magic pill that can provide you with all of the benefits that I mentioned. Better mental and physical health, improved safety, improved well-being. So we want to move people away from this deprioritizing type thinking to more sleep prioritizing thinking. And Thomas Edison, although there's lots of stories of him essentially burning the midnight oil, so to speak, and staying up for a long period of time, he would often try to catch up on his sleep later on. And he valued sleep. He said that sleep could be considered a calamity, or a loss of sleep could be considered a calamity that results in a loss of vitality and great opportunities. So he saw the value of sleep, even though he was known for, you know, staying awake for all hours. His sleep seemed to be much more irregular, but he was trying to get enough sleep to keep himself going. So rewarding people for sleep promoting behaviors, although it's a rather progressive idea, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Some companies are doing it right now. If you look at Aetna, which is like a medical insurance type company, and employee assistance type company in the United States, the CEO, Mark Bertolini, is a very forward-thinking person. And Mark and his executive team put together this incentive package that would actually pay people for sleep. If his people could show that they were getting 7 hours or more of sleep every day, they would pay them $25 a night for that sleep. Now, if you're thinking across a large organization, this is pretty expensive. Yeah, it is. But when they did the math, what they saw was that the $25 they paid out was paid back in great form by returns on their investment, in increased productivity, decreased errors, more efficient work. So $25 paid for many times over just by getting the benefits of better sleep. And I see a great question in here. Can you actually catch up on sleep? Well, hopefully we'll have time to come back to that one later on. And it's a really good one to think about. The short answer is yes, you can. Okay, but we'll hopefully reserve a little bit of time for that in the end. Okay, so the rewarding people for these sleep promoting behaviors can be done. So think about things like whether or not you can recognize people for putting a hard stop on the day and saying, you know what, we're probably getting a little bit fatigued here. We've been working for 12, 13 hours. Time to stop work, get some sleep. Any work we do after this might not be as efficient. We might not be as productive. We might have a safety-related performance problem. And if we do this over and over again, we might then be increasing the risk of mental, physical health issues and decreasing people's well-being. Okay? Now, think about organizational culture for a moment and where some of those influences on it might come from. Organizations are made up of individuals. Individuals bring with them their own beliefs, attitudes, behaviors around sleep and fatigue. So our personal and essentially community cultures can have a large influence on how we deal with sleep and fatigue, whether or not we prioritize it or not, and whether or not we trade time to get a little bit of sleep. Let me give you a really good example of this one, of how our personal or community cultures might impact our beliefs and behaviors around sleep and fatigue. Okay? What I want you to do is imagine yourself on a Sunday afternoon. Your loved one, your romantic partner, your roommate has left your to-do list on the fridge. And the expectation is you're going to get to it on Sunday. But the house is alone, it's quiet, it's on the afternoon on a Sunday, perfect opportunity for a nap. You say, you know, I don't nap that often, so I'm going to sneak in a little nap right here. As you start to fall into that nice, cozy slumber, the phone rings. And it's your romantic partner or whomever left your to-do list. You answer the phone, hello? And they say, oh, you sound a little groggy. Did I catch you sleeping? What's probably the very first thing you're going to say? Well, there's a pretty good chance you're going to say, no, I wasn't sleeping. Okay? You don't want to be caught being lazy, not getting the work done, letting your family down by not getting the to-do list down. Okay? When really, if we were prioritizing sleep, we wouldn't answer the phone. Or we would say, yes, I was taking a nap. Can I call you later? Okay? I think I've got another great example of this. Right, so I was driving through the mountains of British Columbia, driving from logging establishment to logging establishment, giving talks on to log truck drivers. And what I saw was this sign, and it caught my eye so strong that I had to stop my car, run out and take a picture for it. Sleep is for sissies. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a message really. What it was the name of a restaurant. But people still thought it was funny enough to put out there. And it probably echoes a lot of people's belief that if you stop to sleep, well, you can't hack it. We are a weak person, right? So same thing as Michael talked about yesterday. If you admit to a mental health issue, we still have this feeling that we're a weak person. Now, sleep and fatigue issue is not nearly as severe as a diagnosed mental disorder. But we still have this feeling that if we admit to being fatigued, we are weak. If we admit to needing sleep, we are not strong people. So we have to try and change that culture as well, that thinking, that personal or community culture. And what we should be thinking along the lines of is some of our ancient philosophers like Heraclitus, who felt that even when you are sleeping, you are being productive. So his quote was, even a soul submerged in sleep is hard at work and helps to make something of the world. So sleep is not a waste of time. Sleep is a productive activity that will reliably decrease the risk of mental and physical health issues, increase your safety, decrease safety risks. And if you do it for a long period of time, that is, you prioritize sleep across your lifespan, you may actually end up living longer. One key component of our personal cultures is how we think about the trade of sleep for time or time for sleep. So here's tool number 2. So your first tool was to think about the reward system in your organizational cultures, and what are you rewarding? Are you rewarding for sleep promoting or sleep deprioritizing behaviors? Okay. So Second tool is to use a component of mindfulness. And mindfulness has got lots of great research out there now showing that it's all sorts of wonderful benefits from it. One key part of mindfulness is to slow things down and pay attention to what's going on in the moment, to observe your thoughts. So what we can do is we can start thinking about when we are trading time for sleep or sleep for time. Okay? So are we making that trade in an appropriate scenario? Sometimes it might be okay to trade a little bit of sleep to get some extra time. So say, for example, you are a shift worker and you've got a night shift coming up, but it's also your child's very first birthday. And if you've got the same tradition as my family does, you give the kid their own cake and they get to smash this cake, smear it all over their face. It's a really fun thing to do and a once in a lifetime photo opportunity. So you might not want to miss this occasion, but you can't necessarily have this party at night. Right? You can't have it late in the evening because your child might be cranky or might actually be asleep at that time. So a good time for this party would be in the middle of the afternoon. But for shift workers preparing for the night shift, one of the best opportunities to sleep is to sleep in the middle of the afternoon. Our bodies are predisposed to sleep during what's called the post-lunch dip. There's actually a body temperature change. It drops a little. That makes it a really great time to sleep. So you might say, well, I'm going to skip out on a little bit of sleep so I can participate in this party. Now that might be a fair exchange of trading sleep to get a little bit of extra time. Now I'm hoping that you would make up for that loss of sleep by getting a little bit of sleep just before your night shift. But maybe instead of having the scenario of something you really can't miss, like your child's first birthday, maybe you're preparing for your vacation. And think about this, summer vacations and some of the road trips that we do. And think about how you feel at work the day before your vacation. You're trying to get all the projects completed. You might not have an enforced deadline, but it could be, and somebody's saying, I agree, totally agree with the afternoon nap. Yeah, it's a good time. The stress we experience as we're preparing for vacation, right? Trying to get all of these things done. There might not be anybody telling you you have to get it done. And we're really just trying to get them done so that when we return from vacation, that first day back isn't extremely stressful and we have to deal with everything we didn't get done before the vacation. So you stay a little bit late. If you stay late, you might be reducing the time available to sleep at night, especially if your plan is to get up early in the morning and then drive the family, take that family road trip. Now, if you shortchange yourself of a little bit of sleep at night, you might end up being too fatigued hours into that family drive, and you might then be putting your family at a risk of, say, a fatigue-related accident. So there are times when, sure, the trade is okay. Other times when you might not be wanting to make that trade. Now, you might be saying, Clint, you know what? I try as hard as I can. I dedicate 10 hours to sleep every day, but I just can't get the sleep that I want. Stress might be getting in the way. Now, I know in my talk description, I promised you some tools and a secret. So here's one not so secret. Stress is the enemy of sleep, right? Not a big secret here. Everybody who's experienced a little bit of stress knows that, or maybe even an intense period of stress, knows that it can make it hard to fall asleep. It can make it hard to stay asleep, and it might make you wake up in the middle of the morning a little bit, or a little too early in the morning. Now, it doesn't matter where stress is coming from, it always has an impact on sleep. So the poor people from Iceland, I guess it was a few days ago or so ago, this news clip came out. People are having trouble sleeping there because of the stress of the volcanic eruptions and the aftershocks, the earth tremors because of the volcano. It doesn't matter where the stress is coming from, volcano stress, personal life stressors, it all has an impact on your sleep. Stress, what it does is it increases what we call the fight or flight response. It's a natural biological response and has some great benefits to you. But when it's prolonged or interfering with sleep, it's not such a good thing. The fight or flight response is also known as the sympathetic nervous system response. And it creates this polar opposite physiological state in your brain and body that makes it difficult to sleep. What you really want to experience to sleep well is what we refer to as the rest and digest, the relaxation response, or often referred to as a parasympathetic nervous system response. Okay? So we know that stress can make it hard to sleep, but some people might actually be saying that, you know, I can still fall asleep when I'm stressed, and I get about 8 hours of sleep, but I'm still fatigued. I don't feel that great in the morning. Well, what can actually happen is the quality of your sleep can be disturbed without you really knowing it. It's where we get people oftentimes with sleep disorders saying, I sleep for 8, 9, 10 hours, which is perfect quantity, but I still feel fatigued. Well, that's because the quality of the sleep can be disturbed. What you're seeing on the screen here now is a 30-second snapshot of what sleep technicians look at. So if you go into a sleep lab, this is what the technicians look at all night long. This is actually a picture from my brain and other physiological signals. The top 5 lines are brain waves. You should be able to see in the slide, the last half of the screen, so the far right-hand side, you should see like a burst of activity in those top 5 lines. Those top 5 lines, before that burst of activity, you'll see that the brainwave pattern is quite different from the brainwave pattern after it. This is what's known as a brainwave arousal. So you can have hundreds of these arousals every single night that might not wake you up, but they might make it difficult to get the right stages of sleep. So it's what we say is it disrupts the architecture of your sleep. So lots of arousals due to stress can decrease your sleep quality, and you might still feel fatigue in spite of it. Okay. Now, let me offer you another tool here, a tool to help potentially deal with stress and improve the quality of your sleep and maybe even quantity as well. It's what I call the fake it until you make it tool. Okay? It's a biological hack. You hack into your own nervous system to do this. I mentioned that the fight or flight response is part of the sympathetic nervous system response. Sympathetic is the stress response. Parasympathetic is the relaxation response. And the way our brains are set up is that you can really only have one dominant response. The sympathetic system, if it's highly active, the parasympathetic is not that active. So what you do is you force the relaxation response. You force a parasympathetic response. You force your brain and body into thinking that you're in a relaxed state. Okay? Now, try this first on your own, at home without anybody around, because it does feel a little bit weird and it does feel a little awkward, but let me demonstrate it. Okay? So think about first what a non-stressed person looks like, what they do, how they sit, how they talk. Do they talk like me? No, because I'm a little bit stressed because of this talk, a little bit excited, right? So my sympathetic nervous system is quite active. They don't move around a lot like I'm moving around. They don't have lots of different volumes in their voice, different inflections. No, here's what a relaxed person looks like, right? So first thing is relaxed posture, right? So open up your posture, be a big slouch, you know, spread your legs a bit, open your arms a little bit. Think about your movements, slow your movements down. So make really slow gestures. Think about your voice, slow your voice down. Start talking in a really monotonous voice. Start focusing on really slow movements if you want to move a little bit. Even slow your eye blinks down. Right? And as you do this, I can almost guarantee you'll start to feel more relaxed. So you can use this technique as you're trying to fall asleep, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, or if you get in the habit of using it frequently during the day. And it doesn't take that long. What did I do it for? Maybe a minute tops. You do it more frequently during the day, you increase this parasympathetic response. You increase the relaxation response, which pushes the stress response down. Okay? So this is a great biological hack to help you reduce the impact of stress on the quality of your sleep and perhaps even the quantity of your sleep. Now, in my talk description, what I promised was some tools and tips. Tools and one secret, actually. What I wanted to do was give you a target. Okay? So our target here is to use the positive power of sleep to try to improve our mental and physical health, well-being, and reduce the safety risks or increase safety. So if you're looking at an intersection here between three really strong influences, that is our organizational culture, our personal and community culture, so how we personally think, feel, and believe and act around sleep and fatigue, and how that impacts the trade of time to get sleep, which is a good thing, or trading sleep to get a little bit of time, which really isn't the right thing to do. What we want to do is make the intersection point between these three influences as big as possible. So we really want all three of these circles to be merged over top of each other. Okay? And just to recap, the three tools I gave you, first one was to evolve your organizational culture, to start rewarding sleep prioritizing behaviors, to start rewarding people for trading time to get a little bit of extra sleep, okay? Or better quality sleep. Second tool was to use mindfulness to really examine when you're making this trade-off. And as I mentioned, there are times where, yeah, you're going to want to trade sleep to get a little bit of extra time. Okay? I gave you a not-so-secret secret, which is that stress is the enemy of sleep. And then I gave you the third tool, the biohack. Use the fake it until you make it technique to help reduce your stress, improve your sleep quality, your sleep quantity. Okay? Now, I know that I kind of hinted at giving you a power pill, a pill with lots of magical beliefs. Unfortunately, I really don't have that pill. But what I do have for you is 17 more secrets to optimal sleep. Little PDF. And if you jot down my cell phone number, send me a text either now or later on today. I'll make sure we get the 17 secrets to you. The number 613-255-696. There's no sales pitch in that document. It's just 17 more secrets that might also help you get an optimal sleep. Make sure you include your first and last name and your email address in there. I'll come back to that slide in a minute in case you get a chance to jot the contact information down. So my hope here is that you're going to use the information that I've given you so that you don't end up like poor Fred or like our ancient hero or olden day hero, Benjamin Franklin, who, like Fred, had to wait till he was dead to be happy and get some sleep. My hope is that you'll be like one of our real modern day heroes. Some people say even a great philosopher, Queen Bee herself, Beyonce. Beyonce believes that everything starts with a great night of sleep. So think of those immortal words of today's, bright philosopher, Queen Bee herself, and try and get the sleep you need. Now, if you do have to drop off, I understand. Please do try to sleep well, stay safe, happy and healthy. My contact information is there. And I believe, Patrick, you're still on the line. If you want to maybe help me with some questions here, I saw lots of great ones scroll through here. I think we've probably got, about 5 minutes for questions?
Yeah, we have time for questions, and there's been a steady conversation in the chat. Thanks for that feedback. One of the lines of conversation and questioning had to do with text messaging and just internet in general and its effect on people's sleep. Do you find that that's a recurring pattern? And are there positive guidelines for workplaces around how those devices can be less intrusive of positive sleep?
Yeah, so there's really great research, and surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, often it's done on adolescents and the impact of device usage on their sleep. There's nothing good that comes from using your device before bedtime. So when I'm talking to people and trying to do a little bit of sleep coaching with them and get them better sleep, one of the things I talk about is developing a bedtime ritual. So the last 1 hour to an hour and a half, all devices should be off. Now, you might have heard things like, well, it's not the actual device use, it's the blue light from the light that is impacting our sleep? Well, a recent study showed that the light coming from our phones is probably not bright enough to have an impact on essentially on melatonin that will interfere with sleep. It's the actual use of the device. So yeah, nothing good. Now, second part of the question was organizationally. Well, or what are some organizational things that I've seen done? One of the really great things I've seen done is that companies who are really progressive essentially turn off their communication networks after 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So even if you wanted to send a text message to a colleague reminding them of some work they got to get done, or sending a final project to them, you won't get it, right? So turning off these devices and networks and communication systems is a really great strategy. Obviously, you can't just do it willy-nilly. You have to introduce that as a process. Yeah, really good question. Oh, one question I did want to come back to and make sure I answered was, can you pay back lost sleep? So you might read on the internet, you can never pay back a loss of sleep. Well, the idea here is that there's only so much you can sleep per day. So say you're missing, you built up a sleep debt of, say, I don't know, something big like 25 hours. Well, it's pretty much impossible to sleep for 25 hours in a row to pay back that sleep debt. But that's okay, because the body is pretty forgiving. You don't need to pay it back one-to-one. All you need to pay back pretty much any sleep debt is 2 good nights, not days, 2 good nights of good quality and quantity of sleep, and essentially your sleep debt will be paid back. Now, if you're building up a sleep debt frequently and paying it back every couple of weeks or so, that's not really a good thing either, because in that 2 weeks, you're shortchanging yourself of a biological need, right? Sleep is a biological need. It's the same thing as food, same thing as breathing. We don't breathe less than we're supposed to. We try not to eat less than we're supposed to. We'd starve to death. So you shouldn't be shortchanging yourself of sleep either over frequent periods or long periods of time. That will eventually catch up with you and increase your risk of mental, physical health issues, perhaps even longevity and safety risks for sure. Yeah. Any other questions that stood out for you, Patrick?
Well, that question was, one of the participants was Charles Delorme of Emerson Packaging. Thanks for that question. There were also some questions that had to do with guided meditation for sleep, and perhaps the way that guided meditation could lead to a lower resting heart rate. We had a question from Christina Kelly at Emerson Packaging and Andy Pattison from the Workers' Compensation Board. Thoughts on guided meditation, perhaps through the use of apps even, to achieve a better resting state?
Yeah, and I just saw a question here from Louise about the Calm app. Well, there's all sorts of great apps out there that help people to relax. There's ones that are also built around mindfulness, right? If they help to relax you, that's always a good thing. If they help you slow your heart rate, well, that's a relaxation response. What you're doing with meditation, relaxation, guided imagery, focusing on say the Calm app use, which helps. It's got a relaxation system in there. I think the Calm app is one that has some very very sleep promoting stories you can listen to as well that will take your mind off the stressors of the day. Anything that helps you relax will improve your sleep. What you're doing is you're invoking the parasympathetic response and suppressing the sympathetic response. So you're actually doing a biohack with those techniques. Yeah, great question. Any other questions that jumped in there, Patrick, that we should hit? We've got, I think, a couple of minutes left.
Heard from Dan Muse at Nova Scotia Community College. What types of tools are there to assess the potential sleep deprivation of a worker? Other conversational points had to do with shift work and an almost inevitable sleep debt that builds up. How can workplaces assess the sleep patterns and habits of their workers for safety?
Yeah, so one of the projects I will often do is companies want a benchmark of fatigue. Like, where are we at? Is it even a risk in our organization? You have to gather some sort of data to analyze. One of the first things I'll often start with is using the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. And you can go online and just type in Epworth Sleepiness Scale and you'll find it in there. Or if you can't find it, send me an email and I'll send you a copy of it. It can provide essentially a basic benchmark of general fatigue, right? General sleep-related fatigue. But if you want to do a bit more accurate assessment, what you need to do is gather some data around people's sleep and wake behaviors. So you can do things like get people to keep a sleep-wake diary where they keep track of how much sleep they've obtained, their work periods, and then you can analyze that data with some fairly sophisticated fatigue modeling software. One really great tool that I use is called Fade Quantum, and Fade will take sleep patterns, work patterns, or just work patterns really. So you can simply analyze a work schedule and see, are we putting people at greater risk of fatigue? And based on some really strong research over the last 20 years or so, you get an estimate of fatigue, sleep-related fatigue risks for your organization that you can then use as a benchmark to try and improve. If you want an introduction to Fade Quantum, again, I'm not trying to sell you anything here. Happy to do it for free. I firmly believe in helping individuals and companies, so I'm happy to show you it for free as well. Great question, though. What else have we got? Do we have time for one more, or are we at the end here?
Perhaps one more question. I think it's particularly pertinent to this audience. It has to do with emergency situations where there's a spike in adrenaline. Any special recommendations for those who work in those high stress occupations to have that next order calming to get the restorative sleep they need?
Yeah, so I used to be the fatigue specialist for the Transportation Safety Board of Canada. And we used to look at the emergency responses in cockpits, in trains, on ships' bridges. And you do need that extra little bit of stress, that adrenaline rush, as you say, which is the sympathetic response to get you going and to get you to react quickly, to process information really quickly. But as I think perhaps the question was hinting at, well, after that emergency situation has died down and the problem is solved or nothing urgent taking place, you're still left with that rush. Well, again, that's the sympathetic response that has taken over. So you have to force it down. You have to push that stress response down by invoking the parasympathetic response. So any of the relaxation techniques that lots of people have asked about today, or using the fake it until you make it technique. And I know it looked really corny when I did it, but really try it and you will feel relaxed within about a minute of doing it. So that's one really great way. And the reason you want to drive that stress response down is that maintaining that stress response and still performing safely will diminish or that ability will diminish the longer the stress response continues. So you don't perform that well when you're always stressed. Sure, for a short period of time, you do, but longer period of time, not such a good thing. So you want to squish that response down. Seeing lots of people dropping off. Thanks very much, everybody. Patrick, do you want to say a couple of closing remarks? I'll stop sharing my slide, and thanks for your help with this presentation.
Very much so. I think you can see the response. You've offered us a very sympathetic guide to the parasympathetic system. That's the best I can do as a non-sleep expert. And shown us how personal decisions interact with organizational cultures to hopefully find a quiet space in the middle for sleep and restoration. There's no magic pill, but you've shown us that there is a way forward. Thank you very much to Clinton Marquardt at sleepanddreams.com